the rest of you fine folks. I'm here today to try to represent or give my voice to the approximate 1.7 million renters in Oregon. And to give you some approximate real numbers here, 1.7 million people are renters approximately, and over 75% of those people are living paycheck to paycheck. And when you have well over 90% of all renters raising the rents 10 to 50%, it doesn't take a mathematician to figure out what kind of numbers you'd have at the end of that. And I don't understand why the narcissism and greed are two words that have not even been brought up until just now. Because, maybe I should explain to you as if you've already heard, some of you have already heard my story, but myself and my son are both disabled people. And my son has autism. He's 15 and I have primary custody of him, and that's not an easy feat to accomplish, to have primary custody. At one time, full custody. I myself was run over by a 14-ton forklift by my coworker twice in less than 10 seconds on my birthday, January 7th of 2000. I've had 19 surgeries and spent over 70 days in the hospital altogether, 50 days initially, and I'm not susceptible to opiate derivatives, so I don't really have much pain management. And my son and I lived in Wilsonville at a property named Sundial Apartments, managed by Affinity Properties, for over 5 years with 0 complaints in our file, and we got a no-cause eviction. And the people down below us were paying over $500 more. And now my apartment's going for $1,649, according to Craigslist as of last week. I've been living in a motel since November 8th because there is no place in Wilsonville, or really, quite frankly, the surrounding area to move into that would accommodate my son and I, or that would be inexpensive enough to go ahead and live in based on our fixed incomes. And a lot of these landlords are saying that it's out of their hands. I have 2,300 hours in the state of Oregon as being a real estate appraiser assistant, and what I'm seeing completely behooves me, and I don't understand. I spoke with the Clackamas County assessor a few months ago, and he was just basically, Sundial Apartments approximately appreciated almost $5 million in a 5-year time period. Don't know how that happens in the market that we've been witnessing since 2008. I myself lost a home that I put $140,000 down on from my pain and suffering money. I moved to Montana in order to go and undergo an amputation. And a year and a half later, of which I did not go through, mind you, but a year and a half later, my son and I moved back to a home that suffered a 132,000-gallon flood that I just found out a few months ago that my realtor knew about 15 days before she told me about it. And she was able to convince the electric lockbox company to erase the archived data leading prior to 2012 to show who was in and out of my home. We are all asking for your sincere help here, and I believe you guys have the muster, and definitely you guys have enough testimony to make your decisions. The bad apples out there that are renting these apartments are probably less than 1%. Nobody wants to go through court. Nobody wants to go have their lives turned upside down. You have your riffraff. That's a given. But just anyway, I appreciate your time and attention, and thank you for hearing me out. My time is up, and I think you got the gist. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I don't know if I stated, but I've been living in a motel since November 8th. I'm still in a motel. Thank you.
Thank you. Margo?
Thank you, Representative Kenny Geyer, and everybody else for staying so late to hear all of our testimony. I really appreciate it. My name is Margo Black. I'm here today to represent Portland Tenants United, a new Portland metro area tenant union. I'm also here to represent the mom and pop renter. I'm a full-time mathematics instructor at Lewis and Clark College. My husband is also professionally employed. We have 3 children. We reside in the Hillsdale neighborhood in Portland, Oregon. I've been a renter in Portland since 1997. I'm your poster child for bootstrapping. I spent my early childhood in foster care and then with my grandmother, visiting my mother in jail, prison, and mental institutions. When I moved to Portland in 1997, I was 18 years old and 6 months pregnant. I received my first no-cause eviction in 1998 when my daughter was 6 months old, and I had just lost my beloved grandmother months earlier. I was not the problem tenant that housing providers would have you believe are the only recipients of no-cause terminations. I worked as a waitress, paid my rent on time, and had great relationships with my neighbors in my 30-unit complex. I received my full security deposit back when security deposits were still returned if you left your unit clean and in good repair. I was not given notice so they could renovate, rebuild, or re-rent for a higher price. Remember, this was back in 1997 when things were good. No, when pressed, I was able to get the on-site managers to concede that they believed I had a new boyfriend, and they found that to be unsavory. There was no time to manage my bewilderment of being forced out of my housing as a teen mom, a newly single mom, and now an orphan. I only had 30 days to find a new place on one meager income. Whereas I had been able to walk to work and get child care for free from my neighbor, the only place I could find was more than 12 miles away and not close to public transit. I used all of my tips to pay for cabs to get me to work on time. After the third time of being more than 5 minutes late, I was fired. And then I couldn't pay my rent. That no-cause eviction was my ticket to the cycle of poverty. And this was back when things were good. That might be the end of my story, but through extreme good fortune, I was taken in by a generous friend who allowed me to live with him for 4 years. 4 years of stable, affordable housing where I didn't live in fear of eviction.
Marco.
Meant that I could go to college.
Push the thing back just a teeny bit. Yeah.
Thanks. I graduated in 4 years, the last 2 years of which was on a full merit-based scholarship. I went on to graduate school at the U of O, where I met and married my husband, a PhD student, also from very humble means, and had 2 more children. Fast forward to 2011, when my family moved back to the Portland area after a 1-year postdoc outside of Vancouver, BC, a province with rent control, a standardized rental application, and security deposits limited to 50% of the rent, and somehow also with tons of rentals, tons of landlords, and plentiful new development. But I digress. When we moved back to Portland, we took an enormous amount of time and care to find rental housing that we'd be happy with for a few years while we saved for a house. Our first practical opportunity to realize the American dream. The owner was moving to New York City, so she suggested we could even buy her house. She suggested a 2-year lease, but the property management said that no, they would want to raise the rent in a year. Our extensive moving expenses were reimbursed by my husband's employer, and the balance was tax deductible. In the spring of 2012, I was offered my dream job, the one I'd set my sights on in 2003 when I headed to graduate school. How far I'd come, we had arrived. And then we got our no-cause termination. The landlord's daughter was moving back from law school and needed a place to live. The formidable and extensive moving expenses for a 30-day notice to move a family of 5 with pets were financially destabilizing, emotionally traumatizing. And as a full-time professional and mother of 3, it has moved me into a full-time job of advocacy outside of the working hours. House Bill 4001 is far from a comprehensive solution, but it is a step in the right direction. As you consider who should bear the burden of costs of relocation, please ask yourself who is in a better position to do that. Is it the landlord or is it the tenant? Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening, committee members and Chair Kenny Geyer. I think we can say good evening now, and thank you for your extra time to hear everyone. I'm so humbled to sit here with these two and the other folks who share their stories with you. Forgive me if my voice gets shaky when I think of what I've heard. It just brings it home, and it's that more meaningful. My name is Trell Anderson. I'm the Director of Housing at Catholic Charities, Oregon. I'm also serving as the Executive Director of Caritas Community Housing Corporation, which is the housing development arm of Catholic Charities. At Catholic Charities, we have decades of providing important and life-saving services to people in our community who are low-income, low-wage earners, survivors of domestic violence, including families with children, senior citizens, people with disabilities, people from war-torn and famine-stricken regions around the world who arrive here with formal refugee status, homeless women from the harsh streets of Portland. We provide our services both in English and in Spanish. We've developed significant capacity to serve the Latino community in a culturally specific manner through El Programa Hispano Católico. Over the past 2 years, our caseworkers have become housing specialists and housing retention specialists. In every program, our caseworkers report that access to housing and housing stability is the number one issue that they deal with while trying to advance our clients along a continuum of stability. We also develop, own, and operate affordable housing through Caritas Housing, Caritas being the Latin word for love. We are landlords of 16 properties in Portland, Beaverton, Hillsborough, Molalla, Sandy, Canby, and Sutherland in Douglas County. We house over 1,600 vulnerable people. And by this time next year, we will have acquired 3 additional properties in Glendale and Rogue River. We're a member of the Oregon Opportunity Network. Oregon On is a statewide organization with 50 members and over 100 affiliate members. Member organizations are nonprofit housing organizations providing safe, decent, affordable housing across the state. Together, we own and operate some 20,000 units of affordable housing in large and small communities, both urban and rural. You can think of us as a landlord association. As an association, we strongly support House Bill 4001 and the fair and reasonable tenant protection components. As landlords, we understand the nuanced and tactical approach to managing rental housing, particularly with rules and regulations that govern our relationship with our tenants. As landlords and developers, our association strongly supports House Bill 4001 and/or 4143. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Any questions for this panel?
Representative King, would you mind having 30 seconds more in addition to say one last thing?
Okay, 30 seconds.
It's important to know that I brought this information to Mayor Tim Knapp on November 2nd, and in our 10-minute conversation, he was the one that, he told me that I was the first one to bring this information to his attention, and then he had the gall to tell me, what do you want, government to fix this? End quote. With that said, it spoke volumes of his integrity, his motives, and his being. The representative for Wilsonville, John Davis, as you guys probably know, is an owner of a real estate law firm company in Portland. And I haven't heard him speak about any of this. I haven't been able to get a meeting with him at all about any of this. And Mr. Tim Knapp is a multimillionaire landlord himself. He owns a lot of the new buildings that are in Old Town Wilsonville. And he doesn't even hire anybody to help out. He does it himself. He does the blacktop himself. And so there's words to describe people like that.
So Nathan,
anyway,
so we don't want any personal attacks?
Exclusionary zoning. I don't know if you guys should actually have the cities. It should be a statewide thing. The exclusionary zoning thing should be a statewide mandated thing instead of letting separate cities decide that.
Thank you for your testimony.
You're welcome. Thank you for your time.
Okay. Thank you. I think we have one last person. Chloe? Udally? How do you say your last name? Udally.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're the last one.
Sorry, guys. Chair Kenny Geyer, members of the committee, my name is Chloe Daly. I live in Portland, Oregon, House District 43. I represent over 2,000 renters and other concerned citizens about this rental crisis. I support both measures currently under consideration. Today we've heard a lot of anecdotes and a lot of extrapolating from personal experience, and I'd like to share some facts. Real estate is one of the best investments an individual can make. Rentals are one of our...
Keep a little bit farther away from you. Push it a little farther away from you.
About there?
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Rentals are one of our biggest growth markets, and if landlording wasn't highly profitable, we would not have such a powerful landlord lobby helping shape our housing policy. A quarter of Oregon renters are cost-burdened by rent, which is not only bad for individuals and families, but their communities and local economies. Rents have been increasing up to 2 times the rate of income and property values, I might add. This is not down to personal failure of renters, and the vast majority of renters are responsible and law-abiding. Just something I'd like to add after listening to a lot of the testimony today. Increased supply will not address stagnant wages, existing barriers to housing, or structural inequities like housing discrimination. Housing is a human right, cannot be treated like any other consumer good, and should be considered an essential part of our infrastructure. Landlords may not have realized they were getting into the human rights business, but they need to understand it now. Many are threatening to get out of the business altogether, as we heard today, if they are asked to make any concessions during this crisis. That's disappointing to hear. But if they want to sell their properties, I'd like to suggest they consider selling to a land trust, which is a wonderful way to preserve affordable housing in perpetuity. The home builders, landlord lobbies, and other corporate interests took away essential tools that municipalities should have had at their discretion for the past 2 to 3 decades. And now they're asking why these municipalities didn't do more to create affordable housing. I wonder if they have any suggestions other than building more luxury apartments, which is what I see happening in my neighborhood, or expanding the urban growth boundary to build houses where few people actually want to live. How much time do I have?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, 35 seconds.
All right. I would just like to tell you I was born and raised in the metro area. I've lived in Portland proper since 1988. I am a renter. As of today, February 1st, I am a severely cost-burdened renter, spending over 50% of my income on housing due to the fact that my rent has been raised 60% in 4 years, despite the fact my housing is substandard and my landlords have done nothing but essential repairs, and certainly not all of them. I employ 5 people. I'm not maybe the typical cost-burdened renter. I churn a lot of money back into my community, and I'm starting to question whether I can continue to do business and live in my hometown. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions for Chloe? Okay, thank you everyone for coming and staying so late, 7:30. Almost 4.5 hours. Thank you so much. Okay. Oh, that's right. Sorry. Close the public.